About 8 years ago, I met a pride of lesbians up in Halifax, Nova Scotia. They were members of the Women's Auxiliary Fire Brigade. And I was up there just starting a new production I was working on and always on the lookout for production value. I asked if they would like to be in the movie. They said no, that they were too busy defending the city, and I certainly admired their commitment to their civic duties. Um, we went to a pub, and after a couple of pitchers of rum punch, we moved to one of their homes, which was right down by the water, a place called Norris Cove. It was an old sea captain's home. Once inside, um, someone lit a roaring fire, and I produced a couple of jugs of Bombay that I always keep in my bag for emergencies. Um, and then the girls prepared for me a local delicacy, which was turtle steaks marinated in rum and lemon juice. It was delicious. Um, in the course of the meal, the women started asking me strange questions about my health. Everything about my health. Was I on any medications? Was there any history of mental illness in my family? Were my glasses prescription? And they weren't just asking about me, they asked about my siblings and about my parents. It was queer, but I just answered as best I could, and we got through the meal. And after the meal, we went back to the fire, and a little slip of a girl named Lee, uh, she took out a bong shaped like a Smurf and some hashish. So obviously things were getting interesting at this point. Um, but then the conversation again turned left, and they started talking about children. And they said how they all wanted children, and they were having a hard time adopting or finding suitable donors. And they asked me what I thought of it, and I said I was all for it. I love children, and thought it was a great idea. Um, at this point, the bong went around and around and around, and of course I doubled up a little bit. Being a horn player, I have a lot of capacity, and things started to get intimate, very intimate. Um, I won't go into details, but I was lost in a scrum, floating in hashish and juniper, and to use the parlance of Halifax, it got greasy, very greasy. Um, let's see, the next morning I woke up, and I split. I said goodbye and I left. Now, I wasn't back in Halifax for till a month later, at which point I was crossing the street and I saw little Lee, the one with the bong, and she charged up to me and starts pummeling me and cursing at me, calling me a liar and a cheat and a scoundrel. And I'm thinking, well, I may be those things, but I don't know how she would know this after only one night. Um, as I was fending her off, a local constable, an attractive brunette, clapped me in irons and threw me in the paddy wagon. She explained to me I was being charged with fraud, that the 8 lesbians had claimed I had entered an agreement with them to impregnate them. And since none of them had become pregnant, I had deceived them, and hence the fraud. Uh, on the way to the courthouse, I told Sandra that that's the constable's name. I told her that it was just a big misunderstanding, and I'd clear it up in 5 minutes. And by the way, before we got there, I actually cast Sandra in the movie in the role of a mermaid because she had a tremendous physique, and she said she was an excellent swimmer. Um, at the courthouse, I declined a jury trial and counsel because it wasn't necessary. It was a simple misunderstanding. I explained that, of course, nobody got pregnant, because at that point I was on a strict paleo diet, and which was gluten-free, and consequently my sperm count was virtually non-existent. Simple as that. Um, I asked if I was free to go, and the magistrate, who was a woman in her 60s with a severe buzz cut, told me to sit down. Then one by one, the girls got up and explained how they had asked me screening questions about my health, and that I had said I was all for children. And their lawyer, who was a petite blonde, asked me if I knew that they wanted children, and I said yes, I did. I just didn't think it had anything to do with me. Uh, then she went on to say that this was clearly a pregnancy pact, sex for sperm. Now, I blushed at the blunt language, but I came back and said, of course, there's sperm with sex. I mean, that goes without saying. And the lawyer came back and said, so you admit, Mr. Diggler, that there's sperm with sex? And I said, yeah, of course. And then she said, but you didn't deliver the sperm, did you, Mr. Diggler? And I said, well, um, there was a lot of fluid, and she repeated, did you deliver the sperm, Mr. Diggler? And I said, no, I didn't. And that was it. I was found guilty, sentenced to 4 years at Parsboro. And at the time, I was stunned and hurt. But now I have no ill will towards the girls of the fire brigade. And in fact, they were instrumental in securing my early release after 2.5 years' time served. Apparently, they missed old Douche, and they successfully petitioned the warden for my early release. Um, and that's how I ended up in jail. I hope it doesn't happen to you.